Raising women's voices, one story at a time. Welcome to the She Said Project podcast. It is a beautiful day here at the She Said Project podcast. It's always a beautiful day when I get to spend a little bit of time with my friend Kerry Rossow. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, Jenette. Right back at you. This is the highlight of my days when we're all running around and then to get to sit down here and hey, kid.
I truly, truly enjoy our time here in the studio at Illinois Public Media and chatting with some incredible women who have appeared on a stage somewhere. Now that That's What She Said has shown up not just in Champaign, Illinois, where it all began, but I think in 2023 we were in 8 cities. 8 That's What She Said shows in 8 different cities. Can you believe it?
You know, I can't believe it, but it's what we always knew. There is no shortage of amazing women, and it truly travels because every single community on the planet has badass women doing big things, and we just run around the country sticking a microphone in front of their face.
I love that. That's actually what it feels like. Hey, you're awesome. Here, talk to me. Tell me a story.
Yep.
Whenever I sit with a woman and you just tell them what we do in our work, they just start talking stories. Oh my God, what would I say if I were on a stage? Oh, let me tell you about the time when. Women need this. Women need a place where they can come together and share stories. And our guest today is, of course, no different. She actually reached out to us because she had heard about That's What She Said. We launched a few years ago in the Bloomington-Normal community, not too far from where we sit right now. And she had a friend in the show, or she had seen the show, and she reached out to us. And it's a wonderful full circle moment because I was having coffee with one of our cast members. And I said, yeah, I got this message from a woman named Kristy DeWall. And Ray Hatch, who we've had on the show before, was like, oh my God, Kristy's amazing. She's in my writers group. This woman has a story, let me tell you, which is, of course, how many of the women we get to meet. It starts with, let me introduce you to a woman you need to know. So, Kristy DeWall, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here.
How was it that you had originally heard about That's What She Said? Had you seen a show or you just knew someone in the show? Remind me.
I actually had not seen a show. I knew that Ray had been in it, and we met every month with our little writers group called Memoir and Merlot.
I like it. I'm going to consider that an invitation. But continue.
Absolutely. And I had read a piece, and Ray was like, why? You know, why haven't more people heard, about this topic? And so I did some research and found y'all, and that's, yeah.
The rest they say is She Said history, because I remember the first time we talked and I just fell madly, completely in love with you. And so you jumped into this process basically sight unseen. I am so curious because so many of the women we get to work with, they've certainly seen a show or knew some friends in it and were familiar with one of us, but when you sought out this opportunity and then you got to join a cast and go through the process, what was it like for you?
I had heard of it because I actually bought tickets for 2022, but then I had to go to Massachusetts for a drill.
Oh, now the truth comes out. Okay.
Well, I couldn't attend, so I gave my tickets to a friend and they got to enjoy it. But this experience was by far like one of the most amazing experiences that I have been a part of. And I mean that 1,000%, from the ability to share your story, to impacting people, to the sisterhood, to the lifelong friends I now have made, and just all of it all together, from people coming up afterwards and months later telling you how important it was to hear your words and how impactful that they could be to other women was just, it's been amazing. And still.
Wow, that is great. I think that we have to share the goods. I think it's time to roll tape.
Like Kristy said, people have been impacted by her story. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted Kristy on the podcast was because I think more people need to hear the story that you shared on stage. So, Kristy, without further ado, we're going to share that story, the original audio from your performance. You were on fire that night. And during the rehearsal process, it was really amazing to work with you in the editing and the rehearsal. But The night of the show, I had never seen that woman, in any of the rehearsals. Like, you showed up and just delivered the best performance. And
I mean, the audience was going wild before one word was out of her mouth.
This is true. She is a very popular lady in Bloomington-Normal. So now I think it's time for the rest of our listeners to fall in love with Kristy DeWall. So please enjoy this performance. Grab a box of tissues, get your dance shoes ready. You need to enjoy the story from Kristy DeWall on stage. And that's what she said, Bloomington-Normal 2023. And here's her story, a straight up reason to stay.
The day before my second birthday, DCFS got involved with my family because of my mom's third abusive husband. The lady was no slouch. She gave Elizabeth Taylor a run for her money and married 7 times. A DCFS worker helped my mom find a women's shelter where my mom, sister, and I lived for a short time. And then DCFS got involved again for neglect when I was 5. I started kindergarten in Divernon, Illinois, with foster parents that let us watch Nickelodeon's premiere of Pinwheel. They taught us the campfire song, Found a Peanut, and made us eat nasty Brussels sprouts. I can recall sleeping on my little nap mat at school each day, but more than anything, I remember drawing picture after picture of what reuniting with my mom would someday look like. I didn't understand why I couldn't just live with my mom. I didn't understand why other kids got picked up by their moms in minivans, and I only got to see mine once a week in a small, sterile room in the Carlinville DCFS office. Show and tells sucked. Do I tell them I live with strangers, or do I show them a picture of who I visit each week? We ended up leaving our first foster home and were returned home to Mom on her 31st birthday, but less than a year later, we were placed in our second foster home, and then our third, and then our fourth. During that time, I lived on acres of farmland, and I had plenty to explore. It was during those years that I found out I was allergic to bumblebee stings. I discovered my profound love for all things She-Ra and Garbage Pail Kids. I learned how to lip sync to Loverboy and how to magically remove a bra through your shirt sleeve. I became a Girl Scout brownie. I learned how to tie my shoes and ride a bike. I learned the importance of freeze tag, Ghost in the Graveyard, Sunday school, and how to shuffle your feet just right and give electric shocks to others during dry winter months. I was the town of Gillespie's Pogo Ball champion in 1987, and I had the Dairy Queen gift certificate to prove it. I was also fed every meat known to humanity: deer, squirrel, turtle, rabbit, and can now attribute my vegetarianism to the formerly licensed foster parents of Macoupin County. Basically, I learned how to be a kid. I had a childhood. I had some normalcy. However, I also learned how to perfect the art of the foster child, how to blend, adapt, adjust to change. Don't get too attached to any one person or thing, because eventually they're going to leave you, or eventually you're going to be forced to leave it. I learned how to condense my week's worth of kid news and make lists of stuff that I did so my mom wouldn't miss a thing. I learned how to ignore the comments from other kids in school about how I was a weirdo, an outsider, and how to ignore the mean jokes about my Lions Club donated eyeglasses and my hand-me-down clothes from kind teachers. I learned how to hold my hand just right so that when I handed my free lunch card to the cafeteria lady, the other kids in line behind me couldn't see it. I learned how to be ashamed, embarrassed, and how to think something must really be wrong with me. Otherwise, my mom would try harder and get me back home. Eventually, she did try hard enough, and we went back home on Christmas Eve, 1986, and 842 South State Street, Litchfield, Illinois, became our home. A few years later, we ended up back at our hometown of Springfield. And my sister and I stayed with an old family friend while Mom was busy meeting her sixth husband in the psych unit of Memorial Hospital. The two became quite the dynamic duo. If you combine their love of drugs, drinking, and fights with the refusal to take their psych meds, and it was quite a show. We dreaded weekends because it meant we would have to be at home all day long for 2 whole days without school to shield us. And when their fights were particularly volatile, my sister and I would end up spending the weekend in a youth shelter, and I always worried myself sick leaving her there to fend for herself against him, because at least when I was there, I knew she would eat because I would feed her when she was too drunk to do it herself. The drugs and drinking and abusive relationships finally took their toll on our family for the last time on June 27th, 1990. It took the police coming to our house and removing my sister and I 7 times in 2 months before they finally put us back into foster care. 7 times they came to our house, heard our scared pleas, took us, and put us back. 7 times. The 911 dispatcher listened to my sister and I cry into the phone, worried that this man may kill our mom. And on June 28th, my sister and I were placed in a temporary shelter with our maternal grandma until DCFS could find a home willing to take 2 almost teenage sisters. The one resounding theme that is far too common in the lives of foster children is loss. In the few days that we were placed with our grandma, I overheard her telling my sister something. One of Billy Graham's crusades was blasting on Grandma's large-ass console TV, but he was not preaching the word of God loud enough to drown out what my ears had just heard. I want to keep you here with me, but I don't want Kristy. I was about to round the corner from the front of the trailer to the living room when Grandma felt moved enough by the Holy Spirit to ruin summer 1990 for me. I stood waiting in the hallway, running my fingers over the smooth wood paneling of the wall, wondering how long I should wait there, or should I continue listening? Because, devastated or not, it felt wrong to eavesdrop. Eventually, I rejoined them because Billy Graham was almost over and Grandma had promised that we could watch The Sound of Music. So, the 12-year-old me composed myself, I sat on the couch, and I knew in that exact moment that I was not good enough for my grandma. And I sat there wondering what specifically was wrong with me that made her not want me. Was I too loud? Did I talk too much? Was I too whiny? Or was it because I reminded her of her own daughter, my mom? I dared not ask or confess that I heard anything. Billy Graham was well known for singing the old hymn, Just As I Am, at the end of his crusades, and Grandma would hum along. And I don't think that my 12-year-old brain really caught the irony of that moment. This supposed woman of God humming along to a song about Jesus welcoming us just as we are, and in one breath, while spewing such rejection and hurt in the next. Maybe not just as I am, I thought. Well, I was different, and Grandma knew it. I was 10 years old when I first heard Paula Abdul belt out Straight Up. I am pretty sure the heavens aligned, and I immediately turned into a lesbian. It was 1988, and on Saturday nights, I craved Star Search. I also craved Paula. The sound of her tap shoes clicking and clacking sent impure thoughts straight up to my heart. Sure, I was only 10, but I knew. When the other girls in my class were drooling over new kids on the block, I was busy planning my future with the former cheerleader from San Fernando Valley. I was fairly certain that none of the other kids in my class felt like I did, and I could add kissing my Paula Abdul poster to the growing list of things that made me a weirdo. As a kid trying to navigate life, Paula represented hopes and dreams. and she put a face to a feeling. It was the late 80s and early 90s, and there were no positive queer representations on TV or in the media. We had Pat from Saturday Night Live, and it was total bullshit. When you're raised in foster care, no one expects you to amount to much. I never thought I'd buy myself a home. And for years, I convinced myself I didn't want one anyway. I convinced myself that I wouldn't be able to afford one on my own. But the reality was that I didn't know how to sit still. The urge to run is real, and has reared its ugly head many times. And after moving from North Pole, Alaska to Normal, Illinois in 2021, I found the love and support in the form of an amazing group of runners. I found a job at my alma mater. I found some stability, and as soon as I found a reason to stay, it felt uncomfortable. I didn't tell my friends, but this past April, a few months ago, I got the urge and started looking for a reason to leave. Leaving is safe. Leaving is familiar chaos. When you're raised in foster care, no one expects you to succeed or to stay. I applied for a job in Anchorage, feeling a pull to return to Alaska, and I got the job. I was about to accept the offer, but then I did a stupid thing. In the worst possible housing market, I put an offer in on a house in Bloomington. I gave myself a reason to stay. And as I sit in my new home, I anticipate disaster. That's normal, right? Yes. I sit comfortably in my green chair of imposter syndrome, waiting for a fire, a broken hot water heater, a shitty neighbor, a foreclosure. Because 10 years ago, I ended up fired, evicted, homeless, on EBT for a few months, all while thinking it couldn't happen to me because I was the foster kid who had made it. I was the foster kid with 2 master's degrees. In this house, I have already felt joy, fear, excitement, and now grief. But I have to face the fact that I'm home. I have to face the fact that 7 people in this damn town have a key to my new house. And that's 7 more reasons to stay. The bathtub may be ugly, the kitchen may be the size of a closet, and shit will inevitably break. It already has. But it's mine. The first thing I did when I closed on the house was turn the dining room into a music room. I paint the walls fuchsia pink, and I put up my Paula poster. The poster hangs on my wall as a reminder of how far I've come on my journey. I don't kiss it anymore. I really don't. And I don't look at it longingly as I sit in my new space. Paul and I have turned a corner in our relationship. When I met her in Pennsylvania in 2016, backstage at a concert, her first one in decades, I was able to share my appreciation with her. I spoke to her for like 5 minutes, and I thanked her for inspiring me as a kid. And I was able to tell her how she helped me come to terms with my sexuality when I was a teen. She was sweet as pie. We hugged. and she kissed me on the cheek. What she doesn't know is that her face now graces the walls of the very first place that I have chosen to be my home, all on my own, straight up.
2 words. Paula Abdul. Wow. I don't even. Okay, so how was it for you? How was the reaction? You could feel it on the stage, right? The feeling in the room.
There were moments where, people were laughing, and then there was a gasp. Yes, absolutely. From coworkers to fellow runners to people I've just known for years, people I've been seeing for 20 years that were there. Yes.
I love that people showed up for you in a very big way. But you know what you did during this process, Kristy? I'm just going to say it. You showed up for yourself, period. The work that you put into getting to this final story, I'm just so honored that I got to witness the experience with you. You had brought to the table some very hard memories from growing up in foster care. And I'm so glad that you did get to share them with the cast as we worked as a team. And not all of them made it to the stage, but you got to use this experience for all that you could. You dove in and found this beautiful thread of stories that kind of, you remember, we were piecing it together. We were tying it together with a pretty bow. We were sewing it. We were building the plane as we were flying it. It was work, but it was so good. Am I remembering this wrong?
No, yeah, I just remember that first version, and it was all trauma. And I was looking back on that now, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, that was silly. But that's the nature, I think, of this topic with foster care, is that we are taught that if your story isn't traumatic enough, no one wants to hear it. Or if it's not this, or if it's not that enough. And so for years, I always thought, well, no one wants to hear about someone that survived foster care and now they're a grown adult. There's so much more than just physical abuse and the extreme things that we hear about. Honestly, I learned how to write to perform, and you helped me with that. I always thought I just write for the reader, because that's what I was accustomed to. So now it kind of elevated everything and elevated my writing to make me think of it in terms of when you're sharing it audibly, how it can be impactful.
And I think that was evident in the story we just heard. And I love how you worded that. You're writing to be seen, you're writing to be heard, you're writing to perform. It is a different art form than writing a book that's going to be read by your audience, but you rose to the challenge, my friend. And I had never heard of the way you just said that children talking about, or adults talking about their experiences in foster care. If it's not traumatic enough, it's not important enough. And that just blew me away, because you have the trauma, you brought it to share. But is that what a lot of kids in foster care think about their own stories?
I can't speak obviously for everyone, but at least back when I was an adolescent and in my early 20s. And so we knew of famous authors who had made it because of their extreme stories. So my thought was, well, what about those of us with the subtle messages of unworthiness, the subtle messages of not being good enough, the emotional abuse? It's like this hierarchy of trauma. I think that's the case sometimes. And a lot of times those are even worse than the physical things. So I think it's important that all experiences are obviously recognized and valid. So
it is. It's the trap of it could always be worse. When you're in a bad space or someone else is and you're trying to be helpful and well, but at least the sun is out. Well, but at least whatever. And then it's really dismissive. Wait, I'm really, mine is valid in the situation I'm in. And yes, I survived it, or, yes, XYZ. But we're in a culture that we want it all wrapped up in a bow, and yeah, but everything's okay now, so let's move along. I can understand that.
And there's nothing subtle about what you shared, the trauma that you felt overhearing the conversation in your grandmother's kitchen. When you say these subtle messages, you were very honest with the audience that wasn't subtle to you at all. You heard something loud and clear, and that unfortunately defined your self-confidence for a very, very long time. So thank you for being so vulnerable, because I can completely understand how hard that must have been. At the same time, you are the child who grew up and got 2 master's degrees and found purpose in your life and got your dream job. You are a freaking marathon runner. You know, she gets up at 4:30 every morning, Kerry, and goes running. When was the last time you ran a half marathon?
I was just looking for a solidarity moment. Like, I got up at 4:30 all week, but just because I'm 52 and had to pee, but whatever, samesies basically. Sorry, but that is awesome that you then run. I'm just running to the bathroom and she's out there running a marathon. Wow. So what has it been like since? Did you have any surprise responses when people responded after seeing you?
Did Paula Abdul call you? Like, did she pick up the phone and call?
No.
No, not yet. All right, I'm going to have a word with her.
No, but I do have a really funny story. So Bloomington has a First Friday, which is like a big downtown event where you just visit each of the local businesses, and it's real fun. It's called the Tour to Chocolate, and we're walking around to each of these businesses, and there's this woman, and she's friends of a friend, our old supervisor, and she's talking. She's like, "Oh, I really wanted to go see that's what she said program." I was like, "Oh," and she's like, "Yeah, I knew someone who was in the cast," and so I'm like, "Oh, was it so and so?" So I literally go through the entire cast. And she's like, no, what was her name? And then I jokingly said, "Oh, was it Kristy DeWall?" And she's like, "Yes, it was her. Oh my gosh, I love her. She used to be a student worker. And I asked her when I worked there 25 years ago." And I was like, "It's me." And she was like, "Oh my God." We had this hilarious moment of just, "Oh my God, Debbie. Oh my God, Kristy." And it's been 25 years. Apparently, we both look so differently, we didn't recognize each other, and it was just hilarious.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
She's trying to identify you to your face.
That was really funny. And I mean, I've had other moments of people. I had the provost of the university send me a personal card thanking me because she used to be a foster parent and was touched by the story. And, just little things that kind of tie people together. And it's been really, really cool being able to talk with people about the story or out in the community, and people are like, "Oh, hey, loved your story," or "Thanks for what you said." So that's been important, I think, and nice.
Oh, I love that. I mean, there's no doubt that any other person who's hearing your story today for the first time or got to enjoy it in the Bloomington-Normal show, for any child, any adult who's been through something that you've been through, of course they're going to find some connection and something to relate to. But I love how you shared that even a woman in your professional life who has experienced the foster system from the other side, from a parent, reached out to you because your story was important to her. And I think that is absolutely beautiful. We can all learn from your experiences how we can make the world a better place and how we can support children going through such a challenging time. I keep coming back to the family who fed you all the different wild foods and animals. And are you
saying squirrel, deer,
turtle? I don't know. What didn't you eat?
Oh, no, everything. I mean, they also would, and this was the 80s, so, they'd put us outside in the morning and say, "Go play. There's an outhouse, so we'll call you back at dinner," during the summer.
Wow.
So it was very, very country, Southern Illinois.
But I love how you said, I learned to be a kid, and you had some really great experiences. Like you were I'm going to say it wrong. You were the pogo champion, pogo ball champion of 1980 something. And you have the Dairy Queen gift certificate to prove it. Did you ever cash that in?
Of course I did. For a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Blizzard, of course.
Of course. Excellent choice. Okay, so let's talk Paula for a second. Paula is having a resurgence right now, on YouTube and YouTube Shorts and TikTok. She has revived her career. Not that it needed reviving, but I heard her announce recently she's going on tour. Have you heard this, Kristy? Do you have your tickets yet?
I find it funny, though, that she's opening 4 New Kids on the Block when it should be the other way around.
Yes. Yes. No. Paula, if you're listening.
You're the headliner.
You're the headliner. We need more of you. But
I do not have tickets.
Not yet.
Here's the thing. I saw her in 2016. I met her in 2016 at that concert. That is forever going to be, in my heart.
Yeah, you really can't top that. So should you even try? Yeah.
I just recently resaw the video of someone was filming me at that concert when she started tap dancing. And all you could hear was the tap shoes and me screaming.
Clickety-clackety right up to your heart, girl.
You
The goods.
remember Cold Hearted, the video? That video
Yes.
is so racy that my mom forbid me to watch it. And I would still sneak and watch it. And one time
you would
she
practice
actually
the
sat me
choreography?
down.
Like,
Well, I couldn't do the Cold Hearted, but I did. And I didn't say this in my She Said speech, but I performed Straight Up in my 6th grade talent show, and I got a solid 3rd place.
solid. I want to see the video of that, please.
Oh, gosh. That's when my lip sync career started.
What's next for Kristy DeWall? You are, She Said, famous. You're an amazing, amazing person. Are you writing anything we need to know about?
Since She Said, I have been working hard to organize everything. So I've been writing, but mainly organizing because my book project really incorporates the writing with my diary entries since I was 10 and my DCFS files, which I have obtained. So the idea is that I'm kind of interspersing them between chapters. So it's kind of this lifelong project, but since the performance had been more motivated to really get that out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like an amazing project.
Sounds amazing.
It's intense. And it has been years in the making.
If you need to talk to anyone, please give me a call because I know processing all of this stuff can take a toll. But I hope that you are taking care of yourself. You are forever in the She Said family. We have loved every minute of getting to know you and your story. And I can see you out there in the world taking more stages. I think there's a whole world out there that needs you and needs your inspiration.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying.
You're killing it.
So if you need an amazing speaker, Kristy DeWall, I will post her number in the notes. No, I won't. You can always find us through all the She Said channels. Hey, perfect segue, shesaidproject.com. All things She Said to learn about upcoming shows. We have a women's conference coming and to learn all the people that have made the She Said Project podcast possible. Thank you to Sterling Wealth Management. Thank you to Carl and Health Alliance and to our partners at Illinois Public Media for supporting our podcast since the very, very beginning. And thank you to you, Kristy DeWall, for saying yes to being in That's What She Said, and then for spending some time with us today.
It has been life-changing, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone's support. Thank you so much.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. Let's get together for that. I only remembered the Merlot part, but then I was like, oh, wait, it also said memoirs.
Oh, memoirs.
Let's get together for Merlot. Oh, yeah. And memoirs.
And writing. You belong to a writer's group.
Yes, there's just nothing crazier than a group of writers. We are a crazy bunch, but we're fun.
We all need some more Merlot in our lives, so we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Write if you want
Thank
to,
you.
but grab
Yes.
some Merlot.
Over and out.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Kristy.
you, friends. Thank you for listening to the She Said Project podcast in partnership with Illinois Public Media. All materials contained in the podcast are the exclusive property of the She Said Project and That's What She Said, LLC. For more information on our live shows, go to shesaidproject.com. This podcast was made possible with support from Carl and Health Alliance and presented by Sterling Wealth Management, empowering women to live their best lives.